Over 1 billion souls belong to the Catholic Church in the world today, and that's not even to account for the hundreds and hundreds of millions of believers who have lived under her spiritual mantle and the Catholic patrimony for over 2,000 years. Have you ever wondered how to become a Catholic? It's a great question that I'm often asked as a priest, and today I want to share with you a few insights into the Order of the Christian Initiation of Adults. It's called OCIA. It's a process in the church. It's a liturgical movement in the church that we use to help people come into the Catholic Church. But even beyond that, just the experience of conversion, the experience of coming to know Christ. And I'll begin by saying that it really depends on where you start. For instance, one could come to encounter Catholics in the Catholic Church as an unbaptized person. And that puts you in one category of persons called catechumens. Or you already may be a baptized Christian, usually Protestant or perhaps in some cases Orthodox, and you want to come into full communion with the Catholic Church. You're already a Christian, so you're already a believer in Christ, ostensibly, but you want to come into full communion with the Catholic Church. That's a different track. Often we call these people candidates. In praxis, what happens is that catechumens, the unbaptized, and candidates, the already baptized, are all kind of lumped together, practically speaking, in a parish in their preparation for receiving the sacraments of initiation into the Catholic Church, which is typically held at the Easter Vigil, which is the first Mass of Easter, which typically occurs after dusk on Holy Saturday night, the night before Easter Sunday, at the Easter Vigil. So by the time you get to Easter and the Easter Vigil, if you're interested in becoming Catholic, there's a whole series of rituals that need to be experienced, which details of which I won't get into for the purposes of time in this video. But I want to talk from a larger level of the experience of becoming Catholic. This is not just merely a decision as to where you're going to start going to church on Sunday, but it's something, and it should be something much more profound. And if you're interested in becoming Catholic, perhaps you're already feeling a tug in the heart to move in this direction. It's this desire to be in communion with the original Christian community that the Lord himself founded, which is the Catholic Church. And this is part of the attraction of joining the historical Catholic Church, which is the church founded by Christ and sustained by the witness of the apostles and their successors, the bishops, all the way from the time of St. Peter and the apostles to the present age. It's amazing to think that the papacy itself, now occupied by Pope Leo XIV, is in a continual line of popes dating all the way back to St. Peter. Even from a sociological perspective, one would have to be impressed by the longevity of the Catholic Church as an institution. And here I don't just mean simply as a political institution, but simply the bride of Christ, the mystical body of Christ lived out in the experience of everyday Catholics around the world. So the idea of becoming Catholic at first is really a moment of conversion. It's a desire to take on a Catholic worldview, to see things through the lens of a Catholic perspective. And interestingly, that doesn't always line up so neatly with a lot of the cookie-cutter labels that we have in society today, whether you're liberal or conservative or Republican or Democrat. This is apolitical. This has nothing to do really with politics or partisanship, but it's really embracing an entire worldview, which in practice leaves many Catholics at times feeling somewhat homeless when it comes to all those political divisions, so polarizing in our day. But rather, it's joining in the communion of believers. Imagine over 1 billion souls belong to the Catholic Church in the world today, and that's not even to account for the hundreds and hundreds of millions of believers who have lived under her spiritual mantle and the Catholic patrimony for over 2,000 years. It's a remarkable move to become a part of that history, of that story of faith throughout the ages. Now, individuals, when they're coming into communion with the Catholic Church, whether they're unbaptized as a catechumen or they already are baptized as a candidate, they enter in at different levels of faith. And maybe this is where your individual discernment has to come in. Because someone who's already been a Christian in another denomination already has some experience of church or some experience of a relationship with Christ. And part of good OCIA teams, again, the Order of Christian Initiation of Adults, this is the structure in the parish that helps you enter into communion with the Catholic Church, has to help you discern at what level, or you're already understanding antecedently about entering into the church, how to navigate through all of that, because you already may know a lot about Christianity in general. Whereas if you come into the church perhaps as an unbaptized person, the story may be different. Remarkably, in both groups, usually the number one experience, or number 1A and 1B experience of Catholicism is either through a spouse or by their attendance at Catholic Mass on Sunday. And I can tell you over the years how many individuals that I experienced in OCIA, we used to call it RCIA, would come into the church because they kept coming to Sunday Mass at the local parish, even though they weren't coming forward for communion and they weren't in communion with the church yet, but began to discover a spiritual home where they also experienced a final piece, which I want to bring up here, and that is moral conversion. Many times, and I can tell you this as a moral theologian, many times I talk to persons who are interested in becoming Catholic, and they don't have a lot of necessarily hard questions about the doctrine of the church. If they do, it usually surrounds things regarding the Blessed Mother or the role of the Pope. Those are typically. But for most people, the gut-wrenching decision to become a Catholic, and where it's really difficult, is whether or not they're willing to accept the moral demands of what we as Catholics believe. And because we are one of the last places on the planet where the natural moral law is still respected, for example, it's sometimes much at variance with what the world is teaching of us about the nature of sexuality, the nature of marriage, the nature of bringing children into the world, and other moral issues that abound. This is where the individual who's looking to come into the Catholic Church really has to wrestle and struggle, hopefully with the discernment of a good OCIA team and hopefully a good pastor, a good shepherd in the parish who can help them navigate. Truth be told, there are individuals that I've worked with over the years who felt called to become Catholic, but because they were not prepared for the moral conversion that it demands, decided to wait for a year or two and to keep coming to church and to keep working through these things and to keep reading and having conversations and dialoguing with reliable sources so that they could come to a place of conversion and understanding about what they were taking on. This is absolutely crucial because what's so important is that once someone comes into full communion with the church at the Easter Vigil, that is not graduation, but rather it's just the beginning. It's the beginning of a new walk with Christ, a new reality, a new journey, a new adventure. Again, mitigated through the prior experience of having been unbaptized or already a baptized Christian, but nevertheless, a new relationship of communion, not only with Christ himself, the sacraments and her moral tradition, but also with the body of believers. It is a remarkably exciting adventure and experience as a priest. I can tell you, after over 2 decades of working with people in OCIA, to help them come into full communion with the Catholic Church. It's one of the most rewarding parts of my ministry, I can tell you, over my over 2 decades of service in the church. And if you are thinking about becoming a Catholic, maybe this is just your sign that you need in order to move forward on this project and to encounter the church that Christ founded, and to experience all the graces and benefits of her sacraments and her mystical body. If you like this video and others that we present here at St. Patrick's, please feel free to click on the links above. And as always, thanks and God bless.